The papacy has stood for nearly 2 millennia as one of the world's most enduring institutions. But what if I told you that among the men who have worn the papal tiara, some were never truly popes at all? This is the story of Leo VIII, a man who ascended to the throne of St. Peter not through divine selection or the votes of cardinals, but by the sword of an emperor. A man the Church would later declare an anti-pope. To understand Leo VIII's controversial rise, we must first understand the tumultuous world of 10th century Europe. The year is 962 AD. The Roman Empire in the West had collapsed nearly 5 centuries earlier, leaving Europe fragmented into competing kingdoms. But a new power had emerged, the Holy Roman Empire. Otto I, King of Germany, had been crowned Holy Roman Emperor by Pope John XII in February 962. This mutually beneficial arrangement was meant to legitimize Otto's imperial ambitions while securing papal protection against enemies in Italy. However, Pope John XII was a controversial figure even before these events. Ascending to the papacy at just 18 years old through family connections, John's reign was characterized by allegations of moral corruption that shocked even the relatively permissive standards of the 10th century. The alliance between Pope John XII and Emperor Otto I deteriorated almost immediately. John had hoped Otto would defend papal territories against Berengar II of Italy, but not that Otto would assert direct control over those same territories. Meanwhile, Otto was shocked by reports of the Pope's conduct. Contemporary chronicles describe John XII engaging in gambling, hunting, and allegedly transforming parts of the Lateran Palace into what one chronicler called a brothel. While some of these accusations may have been exaggerated for political reasons, the moral authority of the papacy was certainly in question. When Otto established firm control over northern Italy, John XII became fearful of the emperor's growing power. In a fateful decision, the Pope began secret negotiations with Otto's enemies, including the defeated Berengar II, and even sent envoys to the Magyars and Byzantines seeking alliances against the emperor. When Otto discovered John's betrayal, his response was unprecedented. In late 963, the emperor marched on Rome with his army. According to the chronicler Liutprand of Cremona, Otto declared, "To Rome I shall go, and if he be innocent, I shall know it. But if he be guilty, I shall take steps to drive him from the Holy See." Pope John XII, recognizing the threat, fled Rome before Otto's arrival, taking with him much of the papal treasury. With military control of Rome established, Otto convened what he called a synod in St. Peter's Basilica on December 4, 963. This gathering of bishops, cardinals, nobles, and citizens of Rome was unprecedented, an emperor presuming to judge a pope. The synod heard testimony against John XII that included accusations of murder, perjury, sacrilege, and incest. Whether these charges were true or merely political propaganda remains debated by historians, but the outcome was clear. The synod declared Pope John XII deposed. With John XII deposed, Otto needed a new pope, one who would be loyal to imperial interests. His choice fell not on a cardinal or bishop, but on Leo, the chief secretary of the Roman Church. Leo was a layman, not even ordained as a priest. What followed was extraordinary by any standard. On December 6, 963, Leo was ordained as deacon in the morning, priest by midday, and bishop by evening. The next day, he was installed as Pope Leo VIII in a ceremony overseen by bishops who answered to the emperor. No conclave of cardinals, no election by the church, just imperial decree. The new pope's first official act revealed his true purpose. Leo VIII issued a decree that effectively surrendered papal independence to imperial control. The document, known as the Privilegium Ottonianum, gave Otto and all future emperors the right to name the pope and all bishops in imperial territories. It was a complete capitulation of papal authority to secular power. The Roman people and clergy were horrified by this imperial interference. While Leo VIII was officially pope, few accepted his legitimacy. As soon as Emperor Otto left Rome to address other matters in February 964, the Romans revolted. They expelled Leo VIII, who fled to seek Otto's protection, and recalled John XII from exile. Upon his return to Rome, John XII convened his own synod, which declared his deposition invalid and Leo VIII's appointment illegitimate. The synod condemned Leo VIII and his supporters, declaring them excommunicated. For a brief moment, it seemed the traditional independence of papal selection had been restored. But fate had other plans. In May 964, just months after his return to power, John XII died suddenly at age 27. According to the chronicler Liutprand, he suffered a stroke while in bed with a married woman, though this account may have been propaganda to further discredit him. With John XII dead, the Romans, still defiant against imperial control, quickly elected Benedict V as the new pope. A respected scholar, Benedict received the support of both clergy and the Roman people, and was properly consecrated according to church tradition. Emperor Otto was furious at this act of defiance. Once again, he marched on Rome, this time with Leo VIII at his side. Otto's army surrounded the city, cutting off supplies and threatening to starve the population into submission. After a brief resistance, Rome surrendered. Otto entered the city in June 964 and convened yet another synod. This time, Benedict V was brought before the assembly in chains. In a humiliating ceremony, Benedict was stripped of his papal vestments. His pastoral staff was broken over his head, and he was deposed. The former pope was sent into exile in Hamburg, where he lived out his days under house arrest. Leo VIII was reinstalled as pope by imperial command, a second time ascending to the papacy without proper election by the church. Leo VIII's second papacy was brief and remained contested throughout. With Otto's military backing, he maintained control of Rome, but many clergy refused to acknowledge him as legitimate. His authority extended little beyond the city walls and was dependent entirely on imperial protection. During the short papacy, Leo issued several decrees that further subordinated church authority to imperial power. He confirmed Otto's right to appoint bishops and abbots throughout the empire, and even granted the emperor authority to choose his own successor as pope. Leo VIII died in March 965, having served as pope for less than a year since his reinstatement. His death spared what might have been another confrontation, as Emperor Otto had become concerned about the resistance to his puppet pope, and had begun considering whether a more legitimate successor might better serve imperial interests. The Catholic Church would later declare Leo VIII an anti-pope, not a true successor to St. Peter, but an illegitimate claimant. His decrees granting imperial control over papal elections were eventually annulled, though the struggle between imperial and papal power would continue for centuries. The story of Leo VIII represents a critical moment in church history, one where the independence of the papacy was directly challenged by secular authority. This tension between spiritual and temporal power would define much of medieval European politics. Historians debate whether Leo VIII should be viewed as merely a victim of his circumstances or as a willing collaborator in the subjugation of papal authority. What is clear is that his irregular appointment, without election by cardinals or clergy, represents one of the most blatant intrusions of secular power into papal succession in church history. The turmoil surrounding Leo VIII's appointment highlights why the church eventually developed more formal procedures for papal elections. Yet surprisingly, the Conclave, that secretive process we associate with papal elections today, wasn't established until over 300 years after Leo VIII's controversial rise. The Conclave was formally instituted by Pope Gregory X, 1274, following a papal vacancy that had lasted nearly 3 years. Cardinals, unable to agree on a successor after the death of Pope Clement IV, had kept the papal throne empty through endless political maneuvering. Frustrated citizens of Viterbo, where the cardinals were meeting, eventually took matters into their own hands. They locked the cardinals inside the papal palace, removed its roof to expose them to the elements, and reduced their food to bread and water, all to force a decision. When Gregory X was finally elected, one of his first acts was to formalize this practice. His constitution, Ubi Periculum, established that future papal elections would take place in a sealed conclave. Cardinals would be sequestered until they reached a decision, with food rations decreasing as deliberations extended. This system, refined over centuries, remains the foundation of papal elections today, a direct response to the political interference and chaos that characterized earlier periods of church history. The story of Pope Leo VIII reminds us that the papacy, one of the world's oldest continuous institutions, has evolved significantly over its long history. What we take for granted today as established tradition was often forged in the fires of crisis and controversy. Leo VIII's irregular appointment highlights a fundamental question that has shaped not just church history, but the history of governance itself. Who has the right to select a leader? The people? The elites? Or outside powers? For the Catholic Church, this question would take centuries to resolve. The path from Leo VIII's imperial appointment to today's carefully regulated conclave represents not just an evolution in church procedure, but a profound statement about institutional independence. As we consider the stability of the modern papacy, we might reflect on how this stability was hard-won through historical struggles, like the one surrounding the man who became pope without a conclave, Leo VIII, the pope who never truly was. And so concludes the extraordinary tale of Pope Leo VIII, a man who ascended to the papal throne not through the sacred conclave, but through imperial decree. A stark reminder that throughout history, even the highest spiritual office in Western Christendom wasn't immune to political machinations. If you found this exploration of one of the papacy's most controversial chapters enlightening, please support Fide by hitting the subscribe button and ringing that notification bell. Your likes and comments not only help our channel grow, but they also guide us toward future historical deep dives that interest you most.